Good evening, folks. This is Pro TV Broadcasting, and we are doing our daily local podcast on the movie On the Bridge on the River Kwai. I am here with Tyler Helvin, our anchor, and also a really good enthusiast on films, and I am Jordan Knifer, the camera guy behind the scenes. And we're going to talk about a really good classical movie called Bridge on the River Kwai.
That's right. So, Jordan, why don't you explain how the movie starts out with?
Yeah, let's get into it. So, the movie takes place around 1944, around World War II, and it's about these British POWs or prisoners of war, for example, and they got captured in some place in Asia, presumably around India, because that's where the British forces were fighting at the time.
That's right.
So, it starts off the movie with a theme song of the British POWs walking down towards the camp with the famous iconic theme going din 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 din.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a really great shot because you're in the perspective of all the med bays where our American character Shears, or also William Holden, was talking about how these POWs are about to get quote unquote wrecked by the Japanese.
And also saying about starting with the movie, noting the shot at the beginning with the Americans in the medical, and they were digging the graves for all of the prisoners that were there in the camp.
And you saw a lot of crosses, the wooden crosses, and we also noticed that some of the Japanese officers were corrupt because
they were easily bribed because we note that what was his name? The American
Shears.
It was Shears, and he wanted to be put into medical. He wanted to, him and his friend
he didn't
wanted to be
work.
sick, so he bribed him with a lighter, saying about how it was out of the goodness of his heart. And
even though he just grade robbed from the man he was buried,
definitely,
which shows that it's hinting at the cruelties of war. Which sadly, this movie is a great movie, but it's not fully accurate on how the Japanese treated the POWs. But we can explain that later on certain parts.
Yes. Still noting on the grave digging, whenever they pay respects to the soldier apparently named Thompson, who, whenever they were trying to pay their respects, the guy didn't even really care because they buried so many people that they don't even care anymore or can't remember.
He actually forgot his name, and his coworker with Shears was like, "Do you even remember this guy?" He's like, "Oh, sorry, it was Thompson, right?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And there's also the music too. It was all orchestra, so that definitely reflects the times when this movie was made.
Yes.
And it was very clear defined parts. Like during the beginning of the movie, it was very like low tone, like intimidating, like an eerie feeling.
Yeah.
And then there's an uplifting tone when the British POWs walked in with the famous theme.
So starting that, jumping to that scene, we begin with General Saito, or we actually begin with the Fanner, the never-ending Fanner sitting outside.
Kono Saito.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, Saito, okay. But he was in his building, and the Fanner, the never-ending Fanner, was sitting there, and he was never allowed to stop because if he got stopped, then he'd be punished. And then
he'd probably die.
Yeah, probably.
His head cut off or something.
We have Saito, who's in the building, and you see him turn, and the whistling from far away starts, the infamous whistling, and then we have the long shot of all the soldiers walking into the camp. And
it's actually a wonder shot because it's literally just troops just walking in a line, and you hear the whistling, but then it slowly transitions to the orchestra, which empowers the march.
Yes, and then also we get to see how horrible their conditions are because we see the close up of one of the soldiers with almost no shoes, or the sole of the shoe going up and down
for a very long time.
Yes. And then after that, it goes back to the Japanese commander, and the British commander, who was Alec Guinness, otherwise known as Obi-Wan in Star Wars.
Yeah.
He was standing there, and you see the dramatic over the shoulder shot of him turning very slowly, and that was kind of setting up the intimidating factor that Colonel Saito has on the British.
Yeah. And also, the Alice Guinness character was called Nicholson, and he's actually a very interesting character because he's basically the equivalent of Colonel Saito in power, and we see that power conflict throughout the whole film. And at one point, it changes, but then during the end of the film, they become merged as one. And I think that's a really good subdue plot line that if you really pay attention, you can notice it. But in the meantime, it's Colonel Saito's full control. And then you slowly see him devolve into Colonel Nicholson's control. And we go back to the shot of you said he was slowly turning,
Yeah.
looking at all his troops, is when Colonel Saito walked out and introduced him to their location, which is called Camp 16.
Yes.
He mentions that you have to build the bridge on the River Kwai by May 2nd, or else Colonel Saito will be punished, and then that means the colonel will punish the British soldiers.
Yes, and noting that the colonel later stated in the movie will actually have to kill himself if the bridge is not completed on time.
And actually, I'm going to go a little bit in depth on that because the Japanese military during that time was still very traditionalist, and they're really big on the honor code, the code of the samurai.
Yeah, that's right.
The Bushido code is what it's called, and it's very reflective because he said he had to kill himself. What that means is you kill yourself is an honorable death. Because you failed, but you can redeem yourself by killing yourself. So they'll grab the knife and they'll stab it into their the guts and then cut left and down.
Yeah, so very, very gruesome. But
it was very gruesome, but
Yeah.
it was the act of performing honorable death, which would actually like empower his foremost soldiers or something like that.
Yeah,
it's a really cool concept, but I'm not trying to get into depth because we got to focus on the film.
that's right. But going back to whenever the soldiers were going and whistling, and whenever Saito introduced himself, if you remember that Alec Guinness, the Colonel Nicholson, he walked up to Saito and was trying to convey that, hey, officers don't have to work. And he says, by the Geneva Convention, it states here clearly that officers do not have to, work and or do any physical manual labor.
And I thought it was a really cool shot with Colonel Saito. He's like, let me see the book, please. He's like, oh, of course.
Yeah, and then he just takes him and slaps him. And then it also notes how, with that shot, that Colonel Nicholson has a lot of respect from his soldiers because the soldiers immediately went up.
They were about to go.
Yeah, they were about to go and attack Saito, and he yelled at them, back in the ranks, and they immediately obeyed him. And it also showed how, I guess almost like stubborn, or not stubborn, almost like almost proud that he is, because he was standing there.
British proud, like they're over proud.
Yeah, and he had blood running down his face, and he was standing there and wasn't affected by it at all.
And he still tries to continue. He's like he brushed it off, like, oh no, I'm sorry. You don't know the customs or something like that.
He still tried to get it across to Saito that, hey, no matter what, the officers don't have to work. And then that's whenever Saito said, there is no code. This is my code. This is Japanese code.
And the Japanese actually ignored the Geneva Convention during war because they were performing total war. Do you know what that is, by the way?
What was that?
Total war.
No.
It's basically total war is the act of full-on conflict. That means no one is safe.
Oh, all right.
And when we go back to that shot, if you notice that Colonel Saito's on the left side of the frame, so if you close it up to quadrants, he's on the left side, and the Colonel's on the right side.
That's
left side normally means power or something like that.
Yes.
And I guess left also means evil sometimes, to like the righteous side.
Yeah. We'll also get to that later, noting, because I wrote that down in my notes also. But so whenever the soldiers are standing there, Colonel Nicholson gets slapped, and everything, and he commands that he will not have to work. And then the soldiers, Saito says they can rest. And the next day, everyone wakes up, and Colonel Nicholson is still trying to say, we still don't have to work. And so all the soldiers leave, and Saito makes all the officers stand.
And he pulls up the truck with the machine gun.
He has the machine gun. And then we note that the one American that was now in the medic, he said, by God, he's going to do it. He's actually going to do it. And he counts to 3. And then the medic is the one that saves him. The medic
runs out because he says, look at all these injured men that witness you brutally murdering all these officers.
That's right. And he said, is this your code, murdering unarmed soldiers in cold blood, or unarmed men? So that kind of gets through to Saito, but the medic gets slapped by was it Saito or one of the soldiers?
No, it was one of the soldiers. Saito yells the command to slap the crap out of him.
Yeah, and then the medic doesn't even care. He's still trying to get his point across, and he actually saves the officers from being shot. And instead of being shot, Saito makes them stand out
in the sun. And then Colonel Nicholson and I like to call it the hot box. It's basically like this very cramped metal box. But literally, you probably can't even stand up, and you're sitting there in the glaring jungle.
He then gets put in there. Yeah. So that was really tough for him. But he's able to make it through it. The medic comes, gives him food and water.
Yeah, but he wouldn't accept it though because he will not break down.
That's right.
But
The British soldier.
Yeah, he was being arrogant, and it was showing that he's still trying to maintain his control. Like he's trying to fight for that power.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And then afterwards, it shows that he finally gets out of the hotbox and they head to the bridge.
Or wasn't it? Yeah, it was the bridge, and then that's whenever the real beginning of the bridge construction starts.
And it was all messed up apparently.
Yeah, because the bedrock? The bedrock was the bridge where they were building it was unstable. So this is whenever the balance of power actually shifts, kind of, because like you said earlier, with whenever Saito was on the left side, which is power. Whenever they have the meeting and Colonel Nicholson says, we need to change the location of where the bridge is being built, and they're having their little, talk, that after they're done talking, Colonel Nicholson, he is now on the left side because he's actually starting to get power and he's starting to tell Saito what to do.
Yeah, and then he basically just tells Saito that your bridge construction's wrong, and if a train crosses that, it's going to collapse, and then you're going to have to commit suicide anyway.
Yeah.
And obviously, Colonel Saito does not want to commit suicide because he has probably some ties in Japan still or something like that.
Yes.
And he said, and Colonel Nicholson was like, I can help you, but you have to make the officers not work.
Yeah.
So he was bargaining. That was like his bargaining chip.
And then we know that once he was out of the hot box finally, and he buttoned up his shirt and walked outside, then all of the soldiers ran, and it had the whole celebrating scene because, he made it so that the officers didn't have to work and stuff. And
it was the shift of power right there.
Yeah, and also knowing the left side and stuff. But noting after that, just for fun film's sake, after that we see Saito crying, if you remember that, because he...
Yeah, because he lost the control.
Yeah. And for just for you guys to know, the actor that played Saito, he was actually crying at that point because he was actually not able to do his part right there. And the director said, this is bad. We can't understand you. You don't remember your lines.
3 days filming that one shot, and he couldn't actually cry properly.
And he couldn't do it. So the director said, "You're awful. If you can't do this, you can't film." So the actor of Saito, actually went and was actually crying so they got their crying shot anyway. But
it's kind of cruel, but it's whatever gets the shot. I think the director was tricking them because
I think so too.
It was like a motivation tool,
Yeah.
Like, well, if you're not going to cry by faking it, I'm just going to actually make you cry.
Yeah, and he actually did cry, and it was really good crying because it conveyed really well in the film, showing that Saito was now almost out of power and that the British were starting to take over.
He was like a glorified leader almost,
Yeah.
Like he had no real power. He was just there.
Yeah.
And then they tore down the old bridge and they started building a new bridge, the British ways, how the POWs like to call it.
Yes.
And it was the transition of the power, and you see him working harder, better, faster, stronger.
Yeah. And they start working hard. And was it around this point that Shears escapes the American?
Yeah, because he was trying to escape with a couple other people, and he escapes actually because the 2 other people got shot by the chasing Japanese.
And he
found the village, the Siamese village.
Yeah, he went to the village because I think the village found him because wasn't he in the river?
Yeah, he was in the river, probably about to die.
And then the village saved him. So then he went off, and they gave him food in a raft, and
but then he got lost again.
Yeah, then he got lost again. So his situation didn't really get better.
Shears is like a bad person. He has a lot of bad luck.
Yeah, and this kind of the shift for this, noting that Americans, since this was going to be an American
in the actual
film,
original book, there was actually no American. This is the point of the movie where it gets very Hollywood-esque.
Yep. And so they had to throw an American in, and then they were like, "Hey, there's no women in this film yet." So then we have
before you get to that, let's talk about how he actually ended up in his vacation almost.
Yeah.
Because he got lost on the river and he went into the open ocean, and there's a British seaplane, a rescue plane, that spotted him and saved him. So he's in some place in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, we'll say that.
It's British controlled and stuff, and He's enjoying his time there. He's like, yeah, I really like it.
Yeah,
here.
the Navy, was it the Navy base? Wasn't it?
It was a British base.
British,
but
yeah.
Then he had like a nurse, honey, basically, there, enjoying his vacation, and that's very Hollywood-esque.
Definitely, because it broke the pacing of it. It went from like the POWs, horrible, and it was really interesting because it was showing the British and it had the storyline going, and then boom, it goes off track to the American who's on the first civilized place in the entire movie.
It's like. If you probably could cut out that whole scene, or like the majority of all those like acts, basically,
and it wouldn't even
matter because the actual novel was based on the British survivors. Like there was no American, there was no like special like military base where where you recuperate and stuff. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and then he's on the having the vacation, and then the first female in the show shows up, or in the movie, shows up, and then, because you had to have a female in the movie because they were arguing about how, you just have to because it's Hollywood.
Yeah. And it's basically trying to appeal for the American audience, is what that whole scene was about.
And that female was Ann Sears?
We didn't actually know her real name, though, but it was this nurse under the script. But the actor name was Ann Sears, who is probably a terrific actor during her time period because she did a really good job.
Yes.
So he spends a couple days enjoying himself, but then this guy named Major Warden, also known as Jack Hawkins, says, "Hey, you know about this camp, right?"
That's right. Yeah.
So we need you to come back. And Shears was like, "Nah, I ain't
pretty
going
much.
back."
He
literally says, "I am
in the
not
movie."
going.
He said, "Excuse me." He's like, "I just got out of there. You expect me to go back? I almost died. So."
But then apparently Shears a while back he was impersonating when his ship called the USS Houston sunk. He had another guy with him First off, Shears was a enlisted man, so he was a private, basically.
Yeah. He had no power at all. He was just a normal.
He was just a working class military guy, and he was with an officer. And when the officer died, he impersonated the officer.
Yeah, and that's
which is illegal in the Navy, which can lead you to court martial. So Jack Hawkins or Major Warden basically blackmailed Shears into helping him.
Yep. And so then, that happens, and, so he eventually, he gets persuaded and eventually goes back. And
persuaded, quote-unquote.
Quote-unquote, yeah, because he wants to go up and blow up the bridge. So that's his, operation, is to go and put a team in and blow up the bridge.
Mm-hmm. And it's apparently this is the special forces of the British Navy or something like that.
Yeah.
And they have all these, they have the new technology called C4, which is a plastic explosive made out of clay. And it's waterproof, basically. So they're like, "Oh yeah, we got all this new stuff. We got a new recruit who's very hopeful and stuff. Let's go blow up this bridge."
Yeah,
which will lead to trouble later on in the film.
Yeah, and if you do remember, Jack Hawkins, who was the Major Warden, he was going to give Shears the cyanide pill if he got in a situation. So he was saying, you just have to kill yourself if you get caught, and that's why. That's why Shears was like, no, I can't do this.
Yeah. So it was a lot of blackmailing, and I found it interesting because Shears is basically powerless throughout the whole film. He says this is very Hollywood, but I admire what Hollywood is trying to do there because they're like, this is some young guy, or this is some
young American
guy that's
young
in a
American.
He's in a POW camp. He finally breaks free, and he's like, "I'm living the life now. I'm free."
The British commander's like, "Nope, you're going back in." So
shoves him right big in a quote. I'm gonna have to say it, but right back into hell, basically.
Yeah, and so noting that he's gonna go back, and remember whenever he's on the island planning it, if you remember Chekhov's gun, which was the explosion. Whenever they're showing off they say, "Oh, this is the explosion."
They're testing explosives of C4, and Chekhov's gun is basically from one of the older movies where if you show something and you clearly show it, it has to show up later on in the film. It's basically foreshadowing the film.
Yeah, and obviously that's foreshadowing the blowing up of the bridge in the River Kwai.
Yes. So we cut to a little. This is very still Hollywood. We assume the British POWs are still working on the bridge. We have not seen them in a while. It's like 20 minutes in.
Yeah, it has been. It's notably very long time since we go back to the British, which again kind of breaks the pacing.
It breaks the pacing, and it picks up a little bit when they're actually in the jungle with the villagers again, trying to get to the bridge. And then one of the guys die. I think another one dies. Right? There's like a whole bunch of people that died on the bridge the journey there because the jungle is a very harsh environment.
Yeah.
I would not like to be in the jungle.
I wouldn't either. I mean,
like even
I
if
can go in the woods, but not the jungle.
The jungle.
The jungle, but yeah,
that's a very intimidating place.
That is. So whenever they're in the jungle and like the Navy camp or the British camp, they're doing training, and poor Shears, ends up getting metaphorically attacked by the one British soldier who has the rubber knife.
Oh yes, when he was walking towards the meetup with the major, right?
Yeah. And then the commanders, he's gaining the advantage. Use your knife. And then he's like, "Oh wait, I'm sorry, sir." And then I love this line whenever he's, whenever the soldier who was attacking said, "I'm sorry, sir. I thought you were the enemy." And Shears goes, "Well, I'm an American, if that's what you mean." So I thought that was really clever on their part.
It was very clever. I got to hand that to the writers on that.
Definitely. One. So then jumping to whenever they actually start the. Going in whenever they start, trying on their trek to blow up the bridge. We have the young soldier who went along, and he was afraid to use a knife. He was asked the question whenever they had the meeting with Shears and Hawkins. He was asked the question, "Would you be able to use your knife in battle?" And the boy said, "I that's a question I don't really know, sir." And then that was at the time we didn't really know. We kind of guessed, but it was kind of foreshadowing of whenever he'd actually have to use the knife. The question was there, definitely. Yeah, it was. And then eventually it's actually shown whenever they're in the jungle, and Hawkins was the boy. And was it Taiwanese soldier? Or no, Japanese. Yeah.
It was Siamese.
Siamese.
No.
Was it?
The fellow villagers, right?
Oh, no, not the fellow villagers. I'm thinking wrong.
It's Japanese soldiers.
It is the Japanese soldiers. The one Japanese soldier pops up, and he's face to face with the boy.
Yeah, he was probably on patrol or something.
Yeah, and he pauses, and he doesn't actually shoot him. And they actually just kind of stare at each other for a little bit. And then Hawkins, being the British soldier that he is, runs in and kills the Japanese soldier. But in the process, he gets shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
He gets shot by his own, by the Japanese soldier because the young soldier, the promising one, couldn't actually kill him. He had the knife in his hand, and the Japanese soldier was trying to defend himself. And he says, and then Major Warden, or also Jack Hawkins, was like, "You have to kill someone." So he shot the guy for him, but when the Japanese soldier was dying, he pulled the trigger and shot Hawkins in the foot, which made him crippled. Yeah. For majority of that jungle journey. Yeah, for the rest of it, it was a pain for him because he was crippled the entire time. And then we had the Taiwanese villagers, the women, the other women in the film that were along with them, just kind of as fillers. They were kind of, as they were like the support role. Yeah, the support role kind of. They were like, company for the men and stuff. They were, healing their wounds or applying first aid and stuff. And so eventually, they finally get to the bridge. And Hawkins and all of his rescuers, they think that the prisoners, the British soldiers, are in awful condition, when meanwhile they have their own little happy community. It's like they're in their own little secluded village, because the Japanese, it's basically the power merged between Genocidal and Colonel Nicholson. Yeah. There's no one enemy anymore. They're basically, it's a mutual group working on a goal to build the bridge by May 2nd, because they were actually behind on their deadline to build it. Yeah. So Japanese soldiers who were even doing it, actually the officers, the British officers. Yeah, the officers helped eventually. Because they wanted to get that bridge done. That was their big project. Yeah. And noting that it's kind of funny because the whole beginning of the movie, the plot line was officers can't do work. And, Nicholson went in the hot box, the whole thing. And then finally at the end, we'll do work. We'll do work anyway. Yeah. So, they set aside their differences, the Japanese and the British POWs, to build that bridge together. That's right. And even though Nicholson and the British know that it'll be used for Japanese, in the war, they're still proud of what they made. They actually made the plaque that says, made by the British soldiers, Yeah, they're honoring it. We made this bridge, even though it's for the enemy because we're owned by the enemy because they're POWs. We made this bridge the British way. Yeah, that's right. And so then we have the whole British speech
by Nicholson with the whole what you originally thought, I believe, was him planning suicide. Whenever he was sitting over the bridge, and he was saying, isn't it beautiful, and he was talking about what had happened, and
when Colonel Saito was expecting the bridge, and this was like a really good shot of the powers merging, because before you noticed they were the left side and right side, but now they're both center framed when we had the one shot staring into the sunset.
Yeah,
that means they're symbiotic, connected.
Yeah, and originally, the whole thought of suicide. He made the bridge. It's all over now. He has no goal, which didn't happen, but it did foreshadow his death. Yeah.
There was a lot of foreshadowing in this movie, which was great, and also it makes you, the viewer, always wonder, is he going to do that, or is he not going to do that? Yeah,
they did a really good job of doing that. In the time period that this film was in, they did a really good job with foreshadowing. Almost, the majority better than films that are in today's society.
I don't even want to get started on today's films.
Yeah, but so we have that, and then we have, to me, the unneeded musical number. With the whole, after they built the bridge.
The celebration part?
Yeah, the celebration.
I feel like that broke pace a little bit, but it was like the reward. We built the bridge. This is good.
And then while that was happening, it was definitely a shift back and forth, because we have the rescuers who are going to plant the explosives in the river.
The sabotagers.
Yeah, the sabotagers. And, we're going back and forth from them, and then they hear, the sabotagers actually hear the celebration happening. And then we have them trying to be stealthy because there are Japanese soldiers patrolling on the bridge.
And I actually want to quote, because this happened at night after the bridge was completed, and it looks night on screen, but it's actually daytime with a blue filter on it.
Yeah, because I actually said that whenever I was watching it, because remember I said, I was like, oh, it's nighttime, and then they were like, no, it's actually daytime. They just... Which definitely shows the magic of Hollywood and the magic of
Hollywood magic is unreal.
That is right. So they're being stealthy, and they successfully they successfully plan it, but then morning comes,
and then the river went down,
and then the river went
low
down.
Tide, basically.
That's right,
and you can see the wire from the bridge, and it was the day of the train coming through the bridge. And before we get into the actual big climax of the movie, Colonel Saito promised Colonel Nixon all those injured men are going to be on the first one on the train.
Yep.
They're on their own little happy community. The British feel that we treated fairly, and they're just workers now. They're basically unpaid workers. Slaves, kind of, but they're happy.
Yeah. And also...
And outside forces are going to pop that little happy bubble in a couple minutes.
Yeah, definitely. But also, noting just for, Hollywood's information's sake, whenever I watched the documentary of this, they actually built a dam to.
Oh yeah, the bridge was actually built.
The bridge was actually built, but they actually built a dam to remove the water from the river. So that was actually real. There were no Hollywood effects. That river, if you watch the movie, was actually drained, and they had all the water in a dam, say 100 feet away.
Just chilling there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, it baffles me that they couldn't make miniature model bridge. No, they just
built an entire bridge,
an actual functioning bridge that can use the actual cross real trains. They just build it this for the movie, which is shows the determination to get it right.
Yeah.
And let's get back on track here.
That's right.
So it's the day of, and the special forces people are like, "Whoa, the river's down. We're screwed."
Yeah.
And the train was coming, right? This is midday probably. Yeah. And Colonel Wilson's finally doing his final inspection, and he sees the wire.
The one wire, the one little wire.
The one C4 wire to the explosives.
And then we have the long scene of him just looking and testing, and then we have the sabotagers and Shears, watching from a distance. And he's saying, what is he doing? Because Nicholson actually alerts Saito. He says, Colonel, I think something's wrong.
There's something not right. My bridge is about to be blown up.
Yeah, my bridge is going to be blown up. This is not the British way,
Yeah, this is my bridge. Because they're both as one character. Yeah, as one character almost now.
It definitely shows the evolution throughout the movie of, first the British POWs, and then, or the POWs, and then, the Japanese, and then just at the end, they're all one, happy family.
They're basically like a workers' family. Almost.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then there's an outside force blowing up the bridge.
Yep.
And Major Warden actually was like, "Wow, these people are treated unfair." In reality, they're just really hardworking. They're probably getting feed somewhat properly.
Yeah.
They're just hardworking. They look tired, but they're determined.
Yeah. So the boy who actually who was the one that couldn't use the knife was the one set to be the one to explode the bridge.
Go figure.
So
you think you mess up once, you actually have someone else.
Yeah, which adds a lot of dramaticness to it because he's hiding behind the rock, and Nicholson alerts Saito. They go down,
and you literally see him like the wide shot of them walking down the bridge toward into the river, following the wire. Like you see,
he's lifting up the wire,
grabbing the wire and trying to find the spot.
And then eventually he keeps going, and it's really suspenseful until, boom, he pulls the wire, and it actually yanks on the TNT device, or the explosive device.
It doesn't go off, though. But
no, it doesn't go off. But
he sees it, and then he says, oh, this is not good. And Colonel Saito alerts the guards, and then there's this big actual fire.
Yeah, because noting that Hawkins actually stood up and yelled, kill him, kill Nicholson, because he's a traitor now.
Yeah, he basically committed treason
because he didn't know that that it's all mutual now. So he just thought he was just going insane, or that he's joined the Japanese.
And there's this big fight, and the special forces group actually brought a mortar with them. And
they did bring a mortar. Yeah,
they're launching mortar rounds into the river, trying to kill Nicholson and the Japanese soldiers, which they do eventually. I don't think Nicholson died though, but he definitely died. Yeah. He definitely got his bells rung.
He was unconscious, but. If you remember that it was Shears. Shears ran down the American.
Yeah,
he ran down, got
shot. Was shot at.
And then he was crawling through the river. And of course, the line, you. And then Nicholson had. I love his wide-eyed expression.
He was like,
you. He did. He was so shocked that about this. And then. He's taking time to look around, and then the mortar goes off, explodes.
He gets back up. He's so shocked, and he probably has like a really bad concussion. And he looks around, and he faints. He faints on top of the explosives.
He conveniently faints and lands right on the handle, and then the bridge blows up.
With the train actually
on it.
With all the sick people.
Yep. And so basically...
And it's also a really cool explosion. Like, it's actual... Like, if we go behind the scenes, there's actual live TNT packed into it.
Yeah.
You blow up the bridge, physically.
Yeah. So, the bridge blows up. All the, people die. Everyone's dead. And, of course, the one person that survives is the medic. Who then walks up and
the medic's always like the warning guy, because he says, if you do this, you're going to mess up.
Yep.
But then at the very end, he's like, madness.
Yeah, he's standing there going, madness. And then we have, of course, the second to last shot of the long, drawn-out helicopter.
It was a wonder shot of just them
of all the collateral damage and him walking through the river. Yeah. And then the very last shot, which was the bird symbolizing freedom.
Symbolizing freedom, yeah, exactly. Like, all those people were freed from the chains of the corrupt world, or basically World War II at the time. And sadly, we wish we could talk more about this movie, but we are out of time.
That is right. So thank you guys for listening. I had a fun time talking about this, Jordan. It was a lot of fun.
Great movie. I recommend it. I'll give it, out of a 10-star rating, I'll give it like 10 out of 10 stars.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you have the original Obi-Wan in a movie, you cannot go wrong with that.
It might be a little slow sometimes, but it's a matter of preference. But overall, it's a great movie. It has a good ending, a great ending actually, and I recommend it wholefold.
All right. Thank you, Jordan.
Yep. Thank you, Tyler, and we'll all catch you guys later.
All right. See ya.